Welcome back, viewers, to another Logistics Madly with Chang. You've guessed it, this week we'll continue to do a deep dive on the tariffs.
Tariffs, 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 tariffs.
So since last week, Trump pressed on with his tariffs like he had threatened earlier with Canada, Mexico, China, and aluminium, steel around the world, including Australia. Is it going to happen 100%? We don't know. To be honest, you just never know with Donald Trump because this can go on for the rest of his terms, right? On again, off again, on and again, off again. But let's just take it that it is on. A lot of the countries who this will impact will retaliate. Of course they will. The Canadians are now, being very patriotic in shopping at Canadian supermarkets and not Walmart or American-owned supermarkets. They're also boycotting a lot of American-made products. And I think that is probably the most powerful thing you can do. Of course, Canada also supplies a lot of energy to the US. So if they somehow increase their prices or whatever, again, the everyday folk is going to get punished very quickly. With Mexico, well, Mexico's Mexico. Avocado is going to cost $20 each. Tequila is going to cost God knows what, whatever. But guess what? It's alcohol. People are still going to drink it. It's a drug, okay? Which segues into Europe charges US 50% on the bourbons. Trump's come back and threatened 200% tariffs on French champagne. With 200% tariff, people are still going to consume champagne because there really isn't a replacement for good old French bubbly. We've made a couple of videos now. If you haven't seen them, please go watch it. They're doing quite well. Thank you for watching, by the way. It's a lot of posturing, and at the end of the day, as soon as something's being said or done, the repercussions will be felt, and they'll be felt very quickly by the average consumer. I want to narrow in on the Australian reaction of how we are getting impacted by these tariff wars. Aluminium and the steel. I correctly said that Australia ain't gonna do anything because it can't, because we are insignificant to the US and especially insignificant to Donald Trump. And it's a really depressing sight to watch our Prime Minister talking to the news media and its people, me included as an Australian, about,
well, this is not a friendly act. This is not what friends does to friends.
I'm sorry, Alba, but there's only one party that thinks the other party is a friend. And unfortunately, that's us thinking US is our friend. They are not. Now, I'm not talking down on my American friends. They're good people. I have a lot of them across the 50 states. But the system itself ain't that great. How do you have a system that doesn't even give its people free Medicare? How do you have a system that continues to allow free and willy selling of guns when there is mass shootings and when there is little babies getting killed, slaughtered, hunted down with a AR-15? How do you become friends with a system that allows an entire city's water to be poisoned, probably even up until now, and not being fixed? Flint, Michigan, I'm looking at you. And then you will go and say that system is our friend? That system is not even its own friend. It's time for us to wake up and deal with that beast of a nation for what it is. We have to be pragmatic. Stop calling friends and go on a podium with your sob story about this is not how friends treat each other. Shut up. Shut up. Trump is in his second term. He doesn't have a third term unless he can make some sort of coup or whatever. So this is all about him and his reckoning, right? He was almost shot in the head prior to him being elected. He's out for vengeance. He's got a lot of hate. And I can assure you his two agendas will be, how do I make myself look the best whilst making as much money for me and my family? Because let's face it, if I was him, I'll be doing the same. One thing's for certain, us putting tariffs on US isn't really gonna fix the problem because we're a small nation. We don't really import that much. Well, we do, but The stuff that we do, mostly that comes from the US, it's already duty-free because we have a free trade agreement with them. Our public servants don't have it in them because they can't be bothered in administering all that sort of stuff. Believe me, there is two things we can do. Definitely not the Labour government, because the billionaires, the last time I checked, they weren't exactly voting for Labour. They were voting for Liberal government, right? So the Liberal government can then go call on their loyal billionaire troop of friends who are all sitting around the Trump inauguration table on the evening. You know, the Gina Reinhardts of the world that sucked up all the resources from this land. It's time to put these so-called Australians to work and say, listen, you've taken enough of our resources. It's time for you to get to work and start talking to Trump if you have access. Because if you're sitting on his table at his inauguration evening, it means you do, right? And for us as everyday folk, well, there's not much we can do. I mean, like most of the stuff we consume on the streets pretty much all come from China anyway. What's from the US? I mean, like, to be honest, there's nothing much these days. You know, even preparing for this video, I was thinking, what comes from the USA? Okay, bourbon, cigarettes. I really can't think of anything else. Maybe some parts from tractors, maybe military, you know. Oh yeah, we'll talk about the military. Oh, God, we are such a cuck of a nation, eh? We spent almost $400 billion paying the Americans for these 12 submarines. And literally, not within the same month, we get hammered with a tariff on our steel exports. Wow. You know, like, there's no point feeling passionate or emotional about it. It is what it is because this is the beast we are dealing with. You know, stop calling them our friends.
This is not how we treat our friends.
Pathetic. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Come on, folk, very simply, go on the streets, don't buy anything American. To be honest, there isn't anything American left. Okay, don't go McDonald's, don't go to Starbucks. Boycott the US brands, even though most of the stuff that we consume from these brands are from China. Right? There's probably no replacement for KFC, there's no replacement for Big Macs, and believe me, Australians, look, we're not exactly a patriotic mob, are we? Unlike the Americans or the Canadians, you know, they're patriotic. When Canada went subway and we'll boycott the US, and I believe it, and it's made a huge impact. We're not loyal to anyone. We're not loyal to this flag. Australia Day this year, I was driving home from work. Guess how many Australian flags I saw? 0. And that's our Australia Day. I can walk down Santa Monica Boulevard after the fire's gone through. Trust me, I'll see 100 flags. This is the nation we're talking about. So, but I'm still gonna talk to you as a fellow Australian. Stop making that noise, wild. Oh, there is actually one part. That is that little bit of land in the middle of Australia, right near Uluru. That is a CIA base that us Australians can't even get on. We must get US approval to go onto that land. Go figure. So maybe Australian government can do something with that. Now that's gonna go for the jugular, isn't it? What are your cards? Because if you've got no cards, you've got no seat on the table, Australia. And I've already mentioned a few cards. Our billionaire friends are sitting at this table. Us Australians trying to be patriotic, which we're not. You know, the only time Australians are patriotic is when we're overseas. Ah, you're Australia! But when we're at home, we wouldn't even talk to each other. Freaking hypocrites. We're no better off, to be honest, than the Americans. And the third is, look at all the US bases. So the Pollies of Australia, little old freight forwarder from TGL, just giving you a couple of cars to pull. But the sad reality is, you know what, you're not gonna pull them. You know why? Because you don't have the gut for it, right? Because you know, I know you won't. It's just the reality. Go on to the next story. The other story that's caught our eye today, which is the Silk's share price take a tumble of 20% because the ACCC has put on hold the potential purchase of Silk by DP World. So just a bit of quick rundown. Silk's is an Australian company that runs transport assets and as well as some infrastructure at the terminals. They are everywhere in every terminal and especially well represented in some of the further outreaches of our beautiful nation, especially around the mine sites and what have you. They run a lot of those heavy transport vehicles that tows a lot of the mine stuff. So it is a very comprehensive company that has also assets from the old P&O days. Is it P&O or Patrick's? Anyway, I think P&O joined with Patrick's and then Silk took some of their assets on. DP World, on the other hand, is Dubai Ports. They operate many ports around the world, and they've been a reality in Australia for many, many decades. DP World, who is a stevedore who operates in all of the major terminals in Australia, wanting to acquire the flow-on asset provider who is Silk's, be it warehousing or truck transporting, that covers most sectors of our economy, is a natural sort of do you want fries with that approach. Why ACCC's gotten into it? Obviously because they are fearing that it could be anti-competitive, prices could go up and so forth and blah, blah, blah. I personally feel it's probably not that, because some of the big players, when I say big players, large movers of freight, I'm talking the tens of thousands, so forth, and up, will use Silk. Their warehousing services and, some of the large big box retailers could potentially touch on them. And as well as the container transport, potentially yes, but not really, because I, for one, do not know any one of my colleagues in the industry in Australia utilizes Silk service, or any of the customers that we have or the customers we go towards or chase after, Silk's name have ever come up. I don't think, to be honest, it's going to have any of the impact that ACCC is alluding to. Does DP World's going to have access to a lot of information that Silk's control, which can potentially be anti-competitive? Yes, but again, well, DP World did recently launch their global forwarding services here in Australia, but they've still got a very small footprint, nothing major. And to be honest, I've not sat in the front seat of any big companies coming together in such a fashion where the information of both bodies have been efficiently used in a coordinated fashion for anti-competitive in nature. Because whilst the intention might be there, you simply don't have enough good people to roll it out. So ACCC, if you're watching this, you don't have to listen to me, but trust me, your fears is probably misplaced. If DP World wants to buy Silk, let them buy it. It might affect some of the mine sites with the cost going up, or some of the larger players, but they can afford it. But from a, everyday industry, B2B type of situation, it's not going to be the end of the world. There's plenty of supply on a lot of the sectors. So that's my 2 pennies worth on the ACCC stopping of the potential acquisition of Silks by DP World, which I thought was rather interesting because the shares tumbled 20%, which probably is a good time to buy some Silk shares, or maybe not. Yeah, not financial advice. On that bombshell, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.